My name is Celeste Morgan, and I was once a trauma nurse in Seattle, Washington, known for my calm demeanor and swift hands. But today, I'm a different woman, no longer just a healer of bodies, but a witness to mysteries far beyond this world. My story begins on a rain-soaked morning in October 2024, during the quiet hours just before dawn. I was 7 days into a water-only fast, something I had never attempted before. It wasn't for health, not for detox. This fast had weight. A call had come in my spirit weeks prior, a divine whisper in the stillness of prayer. The urgency was overwhelming, like a summons echoing from the edges of heaven itself. I couldn't explain it then, but I understand now. I lived alone in a small craftsman house nestled on the outskirts of Green Lake, a quiet pocket of Seattle. My mornings were sacred. Dim candlelight, scripture, and the sound of rain tapping on the window panes. On this particular day, I felt something stirring in the air as I left home. A peculiar sense of peace mixed with anticipation, like the hush before a great revelation. At 5:22 a.m., I drove toward St. Alora's Chapel, where a small group of us gathered for prayer before sunrise. As I turned onto Aurora Avenue, the streetlights flickered through the soft mist, casting long shadows on the wet asphalt. I was playing an old hymn, "Be Still My Soul," when it happened. Loud screech, flash of headlights, then impact. A pickup truck, speeding through a red light, struck the driver's side of my car with such force that the metal folded like paper. Time seemed to splinter. One moment I was gripping the steering wheel, the next silence. Pure, unbroken silence. Then, I was no longer in my body. I hovered above the scene, fully conscious, fully aware. The ambulance hadn't arrived yet, but I could see everything. My car was a twisted wreck. A young man, the driver of the truck, was slumped on the curb, shaking. Sirens echoed faintly in the distance. And there I was. My body lifeless, motionless, eyes half closed behind broken glass. Then it began. The world around me started to dissolve like mist, and I was drawn upward, swiftly, into a tunnel of radiant light. It wasn't a tunnel like in movies. This was alive, pulsing, breathing, filled with warmth and colors I'd never seen before. Colors that sang. There was no fear, only love. The kind of love that wraps around your soul and whispers, "You are known. You are home." As I ascended, my senses sharpened. I could see layers of reality unfolding, threads of golden light rising from earth, like rivers of energy connecting the hearts of those praying, worshipping, fasting. These were not random, they were strategic, each connecting heaven to earth in brilliant pulsing arcs. Then from the light, a voice, not loud, not soft, but all-encompassing, called my name. Celeste. And I knew. He appeared before me, not in the way I had seen in paintings, but infinitely more real. His eyes, oceans of compassion and fire, met mine. His presence was both intimate and overwhelming, like standing at the center of the universe and being held gently at the same time. "Celeste," he said, "I've brought you here not because your time is up, but because there is something my church must understand." He gestured, and the tunnel widened into what felt like the outer courts of heaven, a realm where time didn't exist. Music resonated everywhere, as if the atmosphere itself was worshipping. The air shimmered with praise. I could see gardens of light, crystalline rivers, and skies that moved like living watercolor. But most of all I saw earth below, and from it spiritual activity like a map glowing in real time. And I saw it again, the golden threads, but now with more clarity. "These are the prayers of the fasting," Jesus said. "Watch." The visions came in waves. First, I saw how genuine fasting, not performative but born of humility, created tears in the spiritual darkness over cities. These tears let heaven's power and light break through. Over neighborhoods, churches, even governments, the fasting of even one person could shift entire atmospheres. Then he showed me something darker, The fasts done for ego, for ritual, for attention. They emitted no light. In the spiritual realm they were as weightless as smoke. But those fasting with repentance, with sincerity, they forged pathways, almost like spiritual highways, linking their hearts directly to heaven. He then took me to the Hall of Intercession. This place, grand, radiant, was filled with what looked like star charts, only they were spiritual maps. Across them moved pulses of light. Each pulse was a fast, a prayer, a sacrifice. Here I saw Moses, Esther, Daniel, not just the events of their lives but the spiritual physics behind their fasts. When Moses fasted for 40 days, he didn't just receive the law. He broke through layers of demonic resistance in the heavens. Daniel's 21-day fast was not passive. It rattled demonic thrones over Persia. And then I saw the unknown fasters, those never named in history books. Grandmothers in small villages. Teenagers in bedrooms. Widowers fasting for prodigal sons. Their sacrifices had shifted history, ushered revivals, and saved nations from collapse. And they never knew. Next, Jesus showed me the spiritual armor worn by those in fasting. I saw a man in New York, fasting in secret. In the spirit, he looked like a commander, wielding swords of light. I saw a young woman in Mumbai. Her prayers during fasting were like guided missiles, breaking demonic strongholds. Every day of fasting, Jesus said, is a promotion in the spirit. Not because you earn it, but because you are emptied enough to carry it. He warned of deception, that the enemy targets those fasting, twisting motives, planting fear or pride. Stay under my blood, he said. Do not fast alone. Do not fast for the spotlight. Fast with me. Then came a vision that struck my core. I saw generations, bloodlines, with blocked wells of blessing. Fasting, Jesus said, acts like a spiritual excavation tool. It clears debris, unlocking ancestral blessings that had been buried under sin, shame, or spiritual neglect. I saw men and women reclaiming promises lost by their great-grandparents. I saw spiritual inheritance flowing again. Fasting creates bridges, Jesus said. Not just to me, but to everything I've laid up for my children. Suddenly, everything began to fade, like a symphony reaching its final chord. Celeste, Jesus said, you must go back. Tell them. My church must understand. The time is shorter than they think. With a look of eternal love, he whispered. Fasting isn't power. I am the power. But fasting aligns you to carry it. I awoke in the ICU at Harborview Medical Center. Doctors were stunned. I had been clinically dead for 17 minutes and 18 seconds. No brain damage. No organ failure. The medical team called it a miraculous anomaly. But the miracle wasn't that I lived. The miracle was what I saw. 3 months later, during another fast, I had a second encounter. My heart stopped again, just 4 minutes. Another moment in that tunnel. Another vision. This time Jesus showed me the fruit. I saw lives changed because of the story I had shared. People embracing fasting, creating ripples across the earth. Chains broke. Addictions ended. Communities healed. Jesus smiled, watching each golden thread connect to the next, creating a great tapestry of light. Jesus told me, I am not calling them to earn my love. They already have it. I am calling them to prepare. The greatest outpouring is coming. And they must be ready. When I awoke for the second time, I knew. This wasn't about me. Never was. It's about you. You who are reading this. You are being called, not to religion, not to ritual, but to partnership with heaven. Through fasting. Through prayer. Through sacrifice. Not for power, but for presence. The darkness is rising. But the light will shine brighter still, through those willing to fast, pray, and stand in the gap. Will you answer? Part 2. The Awakening of the Watchers. The days that followed my second return from death were filled with a strange, holy quiet. There was a stillness in me. Not a lack of sound, but a presence that stilled everything else. The hospital walls felt thin, like veils between realms. Even the nurses who came to check my vitals paused when they entered my room, as if sensing something sacred hanging in the air. Dr. Liu, the head of cardiology, stood at the foot of my bed the morning after I woke. "You shouldn't be here," she said frankly, flipping through my chart. "This is the second time your heart has stopped. And both times there's not a single sign of damage. No scar tissue. No trauma." She looked up, eyes narrowed. "You're either the luckiest woman alive, or something else is going on." I smiled faintly. Something else is going on. She didn't press, but I saw it in her expression. Curiosity. Maybe even longing. By the third week of recovery I was back home, though recovery no longer felt like the right word. I wasn't the same woman who had entered that intersection on Aurora Avenue. That Celeste was gone. In her place stood someone changed. Not just physically healed but awakened. I began journaling every detail of both experiences. What I'd seen, what I'd heard, what Jesus had shown me. But the words felt too small. How do you describe glory? How do you explain a light that sings or a voice that sounds like home? Still I wrote. Then the dreams began. Every night I was shown people. Faces I didn't know, cities I'd never been to, even countries I'd never visited. In these dreams I saw watchers. Men and women who were on the cusp of a spiritual awakening, drawn to fasting but unsure, afraid, confused. Some were pastors. Others were teenagers. Some were weary mothers or broken addicts. But all had one thing in common. They were being called. The Lord spoke to me one night as I lay in prayer. "Tell them. They are not alone. I am raising up the watchers." 2 months after leaving the hospital, I was invited to speak at a small church in Spokane. Pastor Marion had heard through a friend of a friend about my resurrection story, as they called it, and wanted me to share it with her intercessors. It was supposed to be a quiet gathering, just 30 or 40 people in a wooden chapel surrounded by pine trees. But by the time I stepped to the pulpit, the room was packed. They had opened the doors and people stood outside in the snow, just to listen. I told them everything, not just the event but the visions, the golden threads, the warfare, the inheritance, the command. As I spoke I could feel it, the electric pull of the Spirit hovering over the crowd. People wept, others shook. Some fell to their knees in silence, not from performance but from deep, holy conviction. A tangible shift occurred in the room. An invisible wind blew through that chapel and left none untouched. That night, over 60 people committed to a 40-day corporate fast. That was the beginning. Over the next 6 months, my inbox flooded with messages. Not from influencers or networks or publishers, but from ordinary people who had encountered extraordinary power after fasting. One woman in Tallahassee broke a 13-year addiction to heroin after just 10 days of fasting and prayer. A high school student in Germany fasted for 21 days and witnessed a revival break out in her school cafeteria. A former gang leader in Cape Town wrote, "I fasted to hear God. What I got was freedom I didn't know I needed." But what stunned me most was how many of them had heard the same phrase in their spirit. "You are one of the watchers." Began to understand. This wasn't about me. I was just the trumpet. God was raising up an army of hidden warriors, people who were not platformed, polished, or professional. They were hungry, desperate, unseen by the world, but fully known in heaven. And He was calling them through fasting. One of the most vivid dreams came in February 2025. I was staying in a friend's apartment in Istanbul, traveling between ministry gatherings. That night, I dreamt I was standing on a rooftop overlooking the city, and the mosque's call to prayer echoed in the twilight. Suddenly, threads of golden light, just like the ones I'd seen in heaven, shot upward from hidden rooms, alleys, and apartments. Each one belonged to someone fasting. Then I saw figures in robes of flame, praying with fierce intensity. Angels, I realized. They guarded the threads, defending the intercessors from shadowy creatures trying to cut the connection. I heard the voice of Jesus again. The hidden ones are the fiercest. The prayers of the unseen shake nations. When I woke, I wept. By the spring of 2025, the watchers were growing in number. Not organized, not branded, not led by one person, but everywhere. In small prayer rooms in Ohio, in rural huts in the Philippines, in cafes in London, in house churches in Iran. They fasted not to impress, but to intercede, to prepare, to stand in the gap. And the spiritual landscape was changing. I could feel it every time I prayed. There was a new urgency in the heavens, a gathering momentum, like the deep rumble before a great earthquake. And again Jesus spoke. The time is coming when regular prayer will not be enough. The darkness will demand a church armed with fire. Fasting is your fire. Teach them. I haven't shared this publicly yet. But 3 weeks ago, on the anniversary of my accident, I was in Mount Shasta, fasting alone. On the 7th day, during sunrise, I felt the presence return. Not in death this time, but in stillness. I was caught up again briefly. And there, in that radiant place, I saw an ocean of light. Every beam represented a soul who had stepped into fasting after hearing the message. A great wave was forming. Behind it, darkness trembled. Jesus turned to me and said, "The battle is near, but my watchers are ready. And there are more coming." Then he smiled, not with triumph, but with love so deep it broke me. If you're reading this, you are not here by accident. Maybe you've felt that tug, the call to go deeper. Maybe you've wondered why regular prayer no longer feels like enough. Maybe you've battled darkness you can't explain. Maybe you are hungry for more. You're not alone. You may be one of the watchers. Don't fear the fast. Don't wait for others. Begin. Start with one day. Then another. Let him meet you in the hunger. Let heaven open through your obedience. Time is now. The spiritual realm is more real than ever. The golden threads are waiting.